NFL Week 14. I thought it was Week 13. I had to correct the titles. And Ron and I just got here. We haven't even said hi to each other. So we are going to discuss what the hell happened last week and last night, and what the hell we're looking at for this coming week, and what's going on with the playoff races, the divisional races, and I'm sure Ron's got a couple of wild cards up his sleeve. How's it going, Ron?
Good morning, Cris, or good afternoon. Nice to chat here. This will be a little bit of diversion. Life comes at you pretty fast, but yeah, a mixed bag last week in the NFL. I have kind of a good, bad, ugly as we recap last week. One of the big takeaways and one of the sad conclusions was Monday night, if you want to start there. I don't do this often. I felt like I was you on Sunday because I was manipulating some lines in order to get the Jags into favorable positions. And every one of the manipulations worked. I had the Jags -1, -3, and -6. The only thing that didn't work was the Jags themselves. And I'm partly to blame for that because I misjudged Cincinnati's quarterback situation. Browning looked confident and he threw the ball really well. I did hedge obviously beforehand. That was the purpose of all that. So I ended up manipulating to have Cincinnati +7, but all those wonderful situations didn't pan out. So it really hurt what was a decent Sunday become a very average week for me.
Well, I'll tell you, the Kansas City game was infuriating because, Green Bay certainly outplayed them, and Kansas City probably did not deserve the win. Nevertheless, the officiating was just so bad both directions. It's just inexcusable. I can't believe we have real money on this stuff sometimes. And I was commenting. I made an observation that, I didn't finalize the count, but I know there were at least 5 games on Sunday where I don't give a crap how you handicapped the game. You wasted your time. It got down to the last. To the end of the game, and anything could have happened. And if you won, yeah, you're brilliant. Your handicap worked. And if you lost, it's a bad beat. No, every week is getting to be like this. And there's too many toss-up games, which is why it's frustrating to actually, look at these games and bet them straight. That's why I've gravitated toward alternate forms of betting these games. Because you look at, when you have 5 games that could go either way, that's. What do you make of that, Ron? Do you think a pivot is needed, or you think
it was a bad week for officiating? But I think one of the things I'm most proud of is that I don't dwell on the officiating. So I don't want to get too much in the Green Bay game. I think if you look at just the point spread alone, Green Bay was the absolute right side for covering. And even with bad, even if you change one or two of the referee calls, Kansas City was not going to cover that game. You needed the alternate methods to do that. And I think we're underestimating again. And I wrote this in the Wager Talk article, and I encourage people to read that, supplement this show, our brainstorming with that. We talked about this in May. I did anyway. And in August, Kansas City is in the midst of a schedule where every single team they face has a rest differential advantage. Weeks 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you name it. And Buffalo has an advantage this coming week. Green Bay had an advantage. They game planned very well. The other officiated games, it's frustrating. I understand that. You don't want to be stuck with large plays on certain things. In some ways, you could say there was a bad call or questionable calls in last Monday's game with the Jacksonville Jaguars. But instead of pouting over that, I feel bad that I misjudged Cincinnati's ability to run the ball and Browning's ability to take advantage of a decent but not spectacular Jag defense. So I prefer to couch my loss that way instead of the officiating way.
I've been pretty down on the Bengals, but I fully anticipated the Bengals showing up last night, especially with the Jags mediocre. They were 500. Now they're below 500 at home record. But I didn't quite expect it to be like that. Just disappointing because I had the Kansas City just to win the game set up so nicely. But I did have hedges with Green Bay. Plus 16 and something else. But the beautiful part was Monday night, I had it set up 1/2 unit to win 6.85 units because I had the 5-1 favorite Jacksonville just to win the game, plus money. I don't have the exact calculations. Three units to win 4.35. And then I had Cincinnati as a second leg of a hedge parlay with Green Bay, plus 10, plus 250 for 1 unit. So the most I could lose was a 1/2 a unit. And if Jacksonville had just won the game, it would have been 6.85 units. Frustrating as hell to lose those games. And it worked so hard to set it up and it just didn't work out.
Well, that's why, I feel like I was cloning, I was Las Vegas Cris, part 2, clone number 2 last week, which is a situation I don't usually get in manipulating. But last Friday on the Inside Blitz show, I talked about how I was going to be maneuvering Jacksonville. So I was layered and set up as well. I had a chance to win probably about 4 units on Jack. If you add up all the different things that I did, maneuver Tampa Bay to pick them, tied with the Jets. Unfortunately, didn't have a straight bet on San Francisco. That was one of my regrets, but I took San Francisco and parlayed them in this particular case. So I had probably 2.5 units maybe to win 4 units. And then I went back the other way, a third of the play, taking Cincinnati plus the 7. There was a small play I made right after the Lawrence injury because I didn't even know who the backup was at the time. And I will tell you this, anytime you get a quarterback from Iowa in the NFL, you better worry because CJ Beathard came from Iowa. And I saw that and I said, no, get some more money on Cincinnati right now. So I didn't lose a lot, much like you, we had hedged, we had layered, but the problem is we had set ourselves up for something big and we didn't get
it. So Chuck Long's not in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah. As a coach, he's also in the Hall of Shame. He was a play against coach for a long time as well. Wow. We could tell Iowa stories all night.
There any other Sunday games that stand out to you? I mean, the Chargers New England was just ridiculous. I believe they've lost 3 games in a row, giving up 10 or fewer points.
Yeah, I that's part of my article. It's below unfathomable what's going on in New England right now. There's just no words to describe it. None. Yeah, I have a question for you because I was in a dilemma and I didn't do anything about it and I lost. So I had the Lion. I had a small play on New Orleans plus 4.5 against the Lions. The line went to 5 and I said, well, there's not that much difference in 4.5 and 5. There was one shop I had that was Lions minus 4 and one shop that was New Orleans plus 5. And I said, well, why don't I buy off the 4.5 with the 4 and then just take the 5? It'll cost me some vig. And then I said, well, that's just getting too cute. So I didn't do it and I lost my 4.5. Not a big play, but there were things I could have done to actually win the game or, make it a break-even proposition. If you had that situation, because I'm just thinking out loud now, would you have done anything with a 4 and 5 on there, knowing that you played 4.5?
You know what? I usually don't try to elongate numbers like that, but I Did it go up to 5.5 on game day or just 5?
Just 5. And that was really what I had, like 10 minutes to make the decision, and I chose not to.
What I would have probably done if it was nagging me is I would have done a 6 or 6.5 point teaser up to 11.5 with, oh, it fits perfectly. I would have done it with San Francisco to plus 3.5 for the later game, since you didn't have any straight
action on it. Yeah, that could have been a way to go, but I really didn't want to involve another game. I just wanted to either fix my position on that game or stick with the 4.5. And I just thought if I added it up in my head with 10 minutes to go, this is a good conversational item. I'm curious if anybody will respond in YouTube to what we're talking about right now. But was it worth the VIG to just go from 4.5 to 5 and 4? And I played around with it and I said, even if it's worth it, it's going to be worth like 0.5%. I mean, I'm not really improving my position.
It's not worth it unless you're going to do something else with it. So,
so I left it. And unfortunately, if they make the 2-point conversion, we don't even have this conversation, but they don't.
Detroit did kind of what I expected them to do, kind of a little bit of both. I expected them to show up, but I expected them to not roll. So when they got out to that big lead, I was surprised. And then, of course, they started to give it up again. So Ragnow got injured. We don't know his status yet. He's the number 1 center in the league. So that's an important issue for the Lions this coming week. Especially on the road at Chicago. Atlanta and the Jets kind of expected that. When I saw 2-0, I burst out laughing. I thought, is this what we're doing?
Yeah, what an ugly game. I never had a feeling I was going to get involved in that game. So I was probably like you. I just saw the score on the ticker and I said, well, I wonder if this could end up like 8-7 or something, so.
What did we say? Pittsburgh does not show up versus teams that they're supposed to roll. And I mean, this is even worse than they've ever done before to just get rolled by Arizona. I mean, I expected it. I expected Arizona to show. I actually kind of expected Pittsburgh to win. I was fearful that they would cover, but boy, geez, it's just every time they show up for the good teams and they can't show up against the bad teams. It's been that way for years.
Well, like with the small play on Detroit, I did add a small play on Arizona. I didn't like the fact that I think it went to 6.5 and I was waiting for 7, never showed up. So I ended up taking 6. I didn't even get the 6.5. So it became a small play, but it was one of those that we've talked about in the past. If I don't have the play and Arizona covers, I'm kicking myself, So I said, I've got to put something on. I was waiting for a number to make it a better size play. That didn't happen. So I'm okay with that. I know Arizona tries hard every single week, but this was really on Pittsburgh more than
they
Arizona.
didn't try hard the week before, so we expected them to show up.
Well, it's just they don't have a lot of talent, but Pittsburgh's in a little trouble despite their schedule moving forward because Mitch Trubisky is a downgrade. And there's a question on quarterbacks too. Maybe we could segue into that. There's one that shows up with all the injuries. Are you finding yourself betting more in game? Probably the answer is no.
Well, I was playing a lot of in-game Sunday and Monday night because I had both Sunday and Monday nights set up with 20-point middles or, close 15 to 20-point middles going. So I was trying to protect my, the heavier positions. So, I'm doing more in-game to protect positions more than anything else.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. For me, well, I obviously with the injury to Lawrence in game, I reacted quickly on that. But mostly, I'm not waiting for in game with the quarterbacks. I'm trying to form opinions. I either form an opinion and make a play on the game, like my opinion on Jacksonville, or I'm inconclusive on what's going to happen with that quarterback, and I just leave it alone because there's too much variance. Maybe it's something I should consider, but I don't want to babysit these games, and punch the in-game button so much. There's a lot of volatility with that. Companies do weird things with it. So I think any in-game is only with a meaningful quarterback injury right away, or a TJ Watt injury, for example, or just looking at halftime when you have more time to digest and think about what the halftime is going to look like.
There's this website I've been using called NFL GSIS, and it has the fastest updates that I think us plebeians can get. It was ahead of the TV, and it was about the same time as the in game is, because in game is two plays ahead sometimes. It's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
that's been helpful.
Okay, thanks for the tip.
I had to play Carolina plus the points, but I had no confidence, so I only used them in teasers. I started to get more confident as the line, started to press down so much. It just seemed like it was a good position for Carolina. And then they covered, but that was a late cover, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and they needed the 2-point conversion to go from 5 to 3. So 1 2-point conversion made in the Carolina game, 1 missed in the Saints game, which, not even refereeing aside, the pluses and minuses of making a 2-point conversion flip 2 games. So there's your coin flip.
Well, speaking of goofy games, Indianapolis and Tennessee, I had so many bets both ways on Indianapolis plus like 1 to 1.5, up to 3.5, and I had Tennessee plus up to, I think, 2.5, and both sides on money lines plus money. And there was a couple of times in the third quarter where it started landing on one, both directions, and then they had to screw it up and get on the tie it up, which bummed me out because I would have liked to have been able to hit one direction or the other on that. But I was supposed to take Indy. That was one of those games I looked at and I go, don't make me. And I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited, and Indianapolis just would not go to an underdog like I expected them to, because I wanted to use them in teasers and I really couldn't. I mean, I did end up putting them in a negative EV teaser that won, but and I did play him straight a little bit on top of it, but lucky to get that win.
Yeah, if I had to guess, and my position on these games, just give me 3 points on either team, and it was never going there, so I was never going to be interested in the game. I would say Tennessee lost the game a little bit more than Indianapolis won the game, but flawed teams for sure. I guess I came away with Indy's probably the better team, but Tennessee had that game and they could have won it. But that's what 4-8, 5-7 teams do. They play incomplete football. We got a bunch of them in the NFC, and we just happen to have a couple here in the AFC that we're talking about.
I wish I had played Miami more, but I wasn't supposed. I'm following my thing where I'm not just going to play teams for the sake of playing teams. Miami just keeps on rolling against these poor teams.
Yeah, my takeaway from that game is not so much on Miami, but a little bit of a regret on my part. And we can turn back the time machine on this. At the trading deadline, Washington takes its 2 best defensive players, and trades them, waving the white flag. And what did I do? I probably have 1 play against situation against Washington since then. In reality, I mean, I needed to lower their power rating, and I needed to pounce again. I needed to find situations to play against them. So, and that's kind of a regret that I didn't just say, hey, it's not just 1 player on the defensive line. It's both of their players.
Well, there was a third player too. There was a third player gone too.
Okay.
And by the way, I forget what the guy's name that went to Chicago. Boy, was he noticeable that last Chicago game on the Chicago defense. He's really making a difference for the Bears.
Is that Josh Sweat?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But boy, he really stood out last Bears game.
So I have a question for you right now, because in the regular season, obviously, I have mechanical adjustments to power ratings and so on. It's very rare that I come up with a power rating that's just so high in the middle of the season or near the end of the season. I currently have San Francisco as one of my highest ever power rated regular season teams. Thoughts?
Oh, let's see. I didn't actually see what
I mean, I have them at such an advantage, a number right now.
No, they're not. They're not close to my highest ever.
Okay.
No, they're.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's been teams rated better than they are, or better. It might have been them earlier in the season. They were rated higher early in the season than I have them rated now.
Yeah, I have them at the highest point they've been this year, and the highest I've had a team probably in 4 or 5 years. So I mean, really like what they're doing. Bottom teams. Tell me about these 5, and are these 5 in your bottom 5? Washington, the New York Giants, the New York Jets, Carolina, New England, in any order you want. Are those in your bottom 5? And if not, is there who's worse than those 5?
You said Giants, New England, and Carolina, right?
Yeah, and the Jets and Washington.
I have Washington so we have 4 out of the 5 that match. But I have Arizona in the bottom 5.
I have Arizona 6th, so we're close.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I think the bottom 5 are easy to separate right now. So now I'm going to give you something crazy. How many? We have like 56 different starting quarterbacks. So we've been over that before. But could you have guessed in a million years that 3 of the healthiest quarterbacks this year would be Tua, 12 out of 12 games.
No kidding.
Lamar Jackson, 12 out of 12 games, and Matthew Stafford, 11 out of 12 games. Those 3 guys are some of the only quarterbacks that have played almost every snap.
Well, you're gonna get a pat on the back for that one.
I mean, if it's just crazy, because you think, okay, quarterback injuries, Tua's not going to last. We know that Stafford's not going to last. Lamar hasn't played 10, 11 games in the last couple of years. And here they are. And look what's happening with Miami and Baltimore because of that. And even the Rams peaking right now.
Hey, that's shocking. You're absolutely right. We would have bet big money that 2 out of those 3 were injured and out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking around at that and I'm saying, wow, that's really crazy. So that's all I got from last week, but it's very interesting.
Well, we talked about Denver. They were hot as a pistol, and because they kind of remind me of a team coming in this week. But they were hot as a pistol. They were getting that positive turnover variance. They were overdue to not have it. They had red zone problems. They were stuffed at the 4 or 5 yard line to end the game. That was a toss up. Could have gone either way.
After all the time I said they kept Russell Wilson out of harm's way, he goes ahead and throws 3 interceptions the very next week. Thanks. Well, I mean, the problem was I knew Houston was in a situationally good spot, and I said Denver was a pretender, but I could not play the game because my power rating said I had to play Denver. And those are just some of those things. You have to trust your numbers. If you trust your numbers over the course of a full season, 5 seasons, 10 seasons, it works. On that particular game, it cost me a chance to play Houston.
Well, I had to play Houston, but I did not lay the 3. I just played money line and teaser. But worrisome ending. Houston certainly belongs. They what are they? They're only a game back of Jacksonville, but aren't they? Are they 0-2 against Jacksonville? I don't remember.
I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you that Houston's power rating as it stands right now is a half a point better than Jacksonville. So what an amazing turnaround,
Yeah, I've got them side by side. I got Houston right above Jacksonville also.
Yeah. So, it's who would have thought it, right?
San Francisco, you know what? That game makes so much sense. Philadelphia showed up in the beginning, ran out of gas, and got rolled. So if Jacksonville and Houston split, Houston's screwed in the divisional record, though. They're 1-2.
But Jacksonville has a quarterback injury now, so.
Yeah, but they already have they already have 4 divisional wins, so it's going to be tough. If somebody's going to win the division, they've got to pass them.
In the Discord, which you run, a gentleman named MGK23 asked for thoughts on Texas to win the South, the Texans to win the South. So while we're on the Texans in this conversation, the Texans are in there. Like it or not, the Colts are in there as well, because what an easy schedule they've had all season long. So the Colts are clearly the worst of the 3 in my power ratings between Houston, Jacksonville, and Indianapolis. But what a schedule.
Well, Circa doesn't have that division up. I guess they're waiting for word on Lawrence, of course. Let me see if these clones have it.
I believe Lawrence won't play this week. At least that's my guess.
Oh, I don't think he's playing. I think he's got a high ankle sprain that's going to put him out a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, they do have him up. So, what would you make the ballpark for that division?
Oh, geez, you're asking me out of thin air here. Okay, I'd put a hat around all 3. I'd say just Jacksonville, Houston, Indy, because Jacksonville has a game against Baltimore right after Cleveland. They could lose the next 2. And they don't play Indy anymore, and they do not play Houston anymore. So that would be my final answer. I make it pick 'em for all 3. So tell me what they are.
Jacksonville's minus 220.
That's you need a yes/no on that.
Well, Circa will have a yes/no out.
Okay.
What about Indianapolis? Would you take plus 200?
What's their divisional record?
3-2.
Okay, I gotta pull up the standings here. How come we always come up with some actionable items on this show? Divisional record. Yeah, and Houston's 1-2. Okay. The Jags have a great divisional record.
Isn't that what I said? Am I talking to myself here?
But so they could win some tiebreakers because of that. But still, minus 220 seems high, don't you think so?
Well, are you willing to take plus 200 with Indianapolis?
Well, Foster says, looking at Houston plus 350 at a book that's out to lunch.
Yeah, well, that Foster cluck fostered this up because I was going to sucker Ron into taking some really ridiculous prices. Indianapolis is plus 470.
Well, pardon me while I take a break and take a look at some odds around here.
Indianapolis plus 470 and the Texans plus 330.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville could win the division, but boy, oh boy, those seem like attractive numbers. What do we got here? Yeah, they're up here. I see Indy at plus 500.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Another point that was made in Discord was question about the Bills, the Buffalo Bills, to win the AFC at 20-1.
I don't know what it is, but there's something in the air where all of a sudden, after that Buffalo performance against the Eagles, everybody loves the Bills. I mean, they are everybody's sweetheart, darling team to come out of nowhere and make the playoffs barely and win a game or two and muck up teams' future. So, just something that I've noticed. Have you heard that?
I haven't heard that, but they're obviously in a good situation against Pat Mahomes. Obviously, can dictate a lot of different things, but Buffalo's had 2 weeks to prepare for Kansas City, who has their own self-doubts right now. If Buffalo beats Kansas City, it's still not easy schedule. They have to host Dallas. They're at the Chargers. They host New England, which should be a win, and they close at Miami. So this is not an easy schedule. They really still do. There's no way they control their own destiny as far as making the playoffs. They need other teams to lose to get there. They need the Pittsburgh, Cleveland, both of those teams to play down to their competition. They probably need, even with the soft schedule, they can't afford to have 2 AFC South teams get in.
Oh, they control their own destiny. If they run the table, they'll be in at 11 wins.
Oh yeah, from that standpoint, they control their own destiny. But do you really think they're going to run the table?
No.
More likely they're going to be 9-8, find a way to win 3 games, get to 9-8, and maybe lose out in a tiebreaker. It's going to be close.
How does this Von Miller story just get swept under the rug? I mean, that's a pretty serious issue.
Yeah, I'll leave it to the NFL's Court of Justice, which acts slow at some times and fast at others, depending on the star quality of the player.
Yeah, I thought it was remarkable that he was punching, as ABC reported, a pregnant person.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a little too much aggression in the world.
Okay, Patriots, Steelers. The total is what last I saw it was under 30, right?
Yeah, so we've hit new lows in the NFL after hitting new lows in college. Boy, I think this total is justified because you got Mitch Trubisky. They're not going to ask him to do so much in that game. And New England is from another planet in terms of their offense.
The lowest total since 1993, in case everybody hasn't heard it 5 times already elsewhere. I don't know what it is, but everybody's repeating that over and over again.
Must have been a weather game.
I forget. It was a Bears game. I know that.
It could be a fog game then. The interesting stat to throw out there in this game is that Pittsburgh is approximately plus 10 in turnover margin, while New England is flipped, approximately minus 10 in turnover margin.
Really?
That is an incredible difference. That if you think this game has equal turnovers, then it's hold your nose. New England has value.
For a standalone game, I just absolutely love using these Thursday games to lead into other games. And I might be able to take the night off here.
Yeah.
I I feel like no matter what I do, I would be pissed off if I lost. So I'd be better out. And there's nothing I could do that would make me uh, like anything I would do to lose a bet on this game would be more traumatic to my psyche than anything I could do to win anything in that game. What about you?
Well, betting this game would have to come with minimal confidence, put it that way. Um, it's the same. I think New England has just underachieved so much. They've been in situations where they should have won and certainly covered probably 4 of the last 5 weeks. And it's almost like they're phoning it in, waiting for whoever is the number 2 draft pick. And they're going to get their quarterback of the future, whether it be with Bill Belichick or without him. But this roster, this offensive roster, is going to change completely. Do you really trust Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi right now? Um, Devontae Parker at wide receiver. You've got players that are not going to be on the roster in about 5 weeks.
Well, I agree with you. It's offensive.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. You got anything in the Army Navy game?
At the present time, nothing. The place to have played it would have been at the opening number for the over-under to play the under, but that's so long gone. Forget it.
You looking at any of the FCS playoffs?
I have had zero time to look at it, so absolutely not.
Do you plan to?
No. Well, every year I do that championship game thing. I've given you the numbers. I've given you the simulations on those. And I've got some scores exact. I had, what was a plus 22 point underdog to win the game. I mean, I've had a lot of success with that. So I probably will simulate the last FCS game of the season whenever that comes.
Oh, somebody asked for risers and fallers. Let me take a quick look. I haven't even taken a note. Yeah. Wow. There's some real surprises at the bottom.
Okay, I'll comment on yours. So put them out.
Well, the top of the list, I guess, is understandable with Pittsburgh, the Rams, Dallas, and Miami,
As
and
risers?
Indianapolis.
Yeah, 4 for sure. You have Pittsburgh as a riser. That might be a mild surprise.
Now, these are really surprising. Well, the Washington and the Jets are not, but Baltimore, Philadelphia, the Saints, Jacksonville, Cleveland.
I can believe it. Cleveland is definitely falling on my rankings. Their defense, we know about their home road splits. It was another horrendous performance on the road for Cleveland. So I agree with that. Baltimore is surprising to me. Let's see, who else did you mention in that group? Philadelphia is not surprising to me. They've been on pins and needles a lot. I understand the regression there.
I thought people discussing, I don't know. There was absolutely no way in hell I would have dinged Philadelphia for that game against San Francisco. I mean, situationally, with everything involved, they showed up. They just ran out of gas. I mean, I don't ding them at all.
Yeah, it's a tough call for me mechanically with the power ratings, but I do ding a team at home. When they play at home and lose by double digits, they get a mechanical automatic drop. So Philly did drop. They didn't drop drastically, but they did drop.
Where do we go? Jacksonville, Cleveland. Ugh.
Well, Cleveland is now 3 based on the fact that we think that it's going to be C.J. Beathard at quarterback. So, and Cleveland's at home. So, again, they're a different team at home. You'd have to give the edge Cleveland right now. Also, short week for Jacksonville.
Flacco looked pretty darn good for a while.
Yeah, I probably underestimated him just a little bit there, but I didn't underestimate Cleveland's defense against Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is Kirk out also? I mean, when Kirk went out early last night, I thought that there might be some problems.
First play, he went out.
I know.
I didn't even see it. I didn't even have the game on at that particular time. And then I hear he's out of the game. So, yeah, that means that there's one less guy to worry about with your top cover guy. So you could put cover capital on some of these other players. It's a big loss when you lose your number one receiver in most cases.
Uh,
Big game Rams Baltimore. Very interesting game too. Baltimore trying to get that number one seed and the coveted number one seed in a contentious AFC. And, a Ram win here would be gravy.
Yeah, the Ram win is going to make those NFC playoffs look mighty interesting. And it just pissed me off. I think the no on Denver is on Baltimore to win the division is plus 430 or something.
Mm-hmm. Cris, we appreciate those who listen to our show or watch our show because once again, we have news from Fuster Cluck. Kirk is up to 8 weeks, needs surgery. Wow. Interesting.
So what do I do, Maestro, since I screwed it up last year? What do I do with my plus 275 Baltimore? Should I take some no they don't for plus 480 or better just to get my money back in the case of emergency?
Let me double check the standings because I think you're in safe haven there. They're up by 2 full games on Pittsburgh without their starting quarterback, Cleveland without their starting quarterback, and Cincinnati without their starting quarterback. Personally, wouldn't hedge.
Yeah, they're 4 games up on Cincy because they've got the tiebreaker.
Yeah. It would take a lot. And they have a moderately difficult schedule, if I remember.
No.
At Jacksonville, at San Francisco, and Miami, they play at home. Obviously, if Jacksonville doesn't have Trevor Lawrence, but it's a road game. Conceivably, they could lose 2 out of 5. Let's say, they could lose 3. Let's give them worst case scenario. They could lose 3. They have 11, but I don't think any of the other teams get to 11.
No, I don't think so. Well, I was just double checking.
Yeah.
So what do you see happening in that game? Rams, they showing up or they get steamrolled?
Well, as long as you tell me that, here's 2 of the 3 quarterbacks I talked about. Stafford and Lamar Jackson are relatively healthy right now. The only way I would look would be the dog, and I wouldn't be concerned again. It took a bad break for Baltimore to be able to cover the second half against the Chargers because Zay Flowers didn't kneel down. He went all the way in the end zone. So I would still be looking in game with the Rams.
McVay, a coach of the year candidate?
I think right now the award is for second place because first place is Houston's guy. D'Amico Rhymes number 1, maybe Shanahan number 2. We don't give San Francisco enough credit if they end up the number 1 seed.
You know what I don't like about that is all this Purdy talk for MVP. With his supporting cast,
it's a fantastic supporting cast.
I'm pro Purdy. I'm pro San Francisco. I have no MVP votes, so I've got no horse in any race. There's no Lions I could root in for that. So completely neutral. I just don't think Purdy deserves an MVP. I think that team is just too strong. He has too much support. I I agree with what your tweet was. Where McCaffrey, I would consider McCaffrey before I would consider Purdy.
Yeah. You know, you got McCaffrey, you got Ayuk, you got Debo Samuel, who's really important, and Purdy. If you want to go with Tyreek Hill, who's having an unbelievable year, and I would consider him, but you have Tua throwing him the ball, and it's just tailor-made the way he leads wide receivers over the middle and allows Tyreek Hill to catch the ball in stride. But who else would be up for the award? Maybe Lamar Jackson should be considered.
You know, if he wasn't a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, what they're doing with Stroud it's hard to. Donovan Peoples-Jones is his go-to wide receiver, and he's not a household name.
It's going to be interesting. And Tyreek only has 500 odd yards to go to break the record. So, and he should easily do that.
Yeah, and I guess Dak Prescott could get some MVP votes too, although he does have a couple of lesser games when they play tougher competition. You and I both know what Dallas has been doing to mediocre competition. We want to see what he does this week against Philly.
Yep, I agree. Next.
Detroit, Chicago. Talk to me.
Well, the public loves these Bears. I mean, how in the hell can't you bet the Bears? I'm not saying I am, and I'm not saying that's the right side, but for the average person, you saw what Chicago did to Detroit in Detroit. You've watched Detroit sputter these last 3-4 games. Their defense is obviously down the floorboards. It's outside, 20-mile-an-hour plus winds, 40-degree temperatures, with Goff and his little mini hands, as everybody likes to bring up. How in the world can you not take the Bears in this situation? I'm just asking.
Okay. Well, I have situations that favor Chicago in this game, and getting over 3 points probably pushes the needle to the Bears. I don't know if they're going to win. I don't think we should say, oh, the Bears are going to win or whatever. I just think this has all the makings of a game that's not going to be decided until the end.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more interesting than people think. Boy, I'm sounding like a broken record, but these matchups just never go off as scripted. And the script here is the Bears win, and so go against the script. Maybe the Lions win.
The Lions are up 3 games in the NFC North. I don't think there's urgency for them in this game. You could say, oh, they're not going to look past the Bears. And you're right. They're not going to look past the Bears. But in terms of absolute urgency in this game, it's not going to be there.
But the Lions, I'll have to check the playoff scenarios, but I believe, wouldn't the Lions have the inside track to the number 1 seed when Dallas beats Philadelphia this week?
It's possible, but if I'm a coach, I don't even care about that stuff. You've got 2 games left against Minnesota, and I think you have a game against Green Bay too. Is that correct?
No, we played Green Bay twice.
Okay,
remember
so
we
you have
blew
2
them
games
out
left.
First game.
You're right. 2 games left against Minnesota. 1 game left at Dallas.
Right.
So the work is not even near over yet. So if you want to have inside track or outside track, you have a chance to beat Dallas much later in the year. This is just get in, get out, hope you get a win. I don't see any kind of motivational advantage whatsoever for the Lions in this game.
You may be right there. I'm going to be monitoring the situation. I don't have a firm hold on it at this point. I'm surprised it's holding as many 3.5s as it is. The total, I took a big position on the under, and I see 39.5 out there.
Yeah.
Well, I took a big position on under 43 on that Rams total, and that's down to 40, and I think it could still go lower. What do you think there?
I hadn't checked the weather situation, so I assume we're dealing with weather there, and I know we're dealing with weather in Chicago. It's
supposed to be raining in Baltimore with the 20-mile-an-hour plus winds and cool.
So I tend to set my over-unders assuming decent weather. And so based on that, I'm higher than 40 in both games, but it changes the equation considerably. So I'm not, when you have winds over 15, you stop looking at the over. That's just the rule.
Lions 36 degrees, 21-mile-an-hour winds, and chance of rain.
I'm looking here. The last comment was Baltimore, Chicago, Cleveland, all bad weather. Isn't every game in Cleveland bad weather? It's just, for the last few years.
The Jets are going to be likely rain, 20-mile-an-hour winds. The Browns likely rain, 23-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Ravens, slight chance of thunderstorms, 21 miles per hour.
Amazing, huh? Well, we're going to have some weather this year. That's for sure. Question for everybody. Is Derek Carr going to be cleared to play this week? He's in concussion protocol. That would throw Jameis Winston and a lot more of Taysom Hill into the mix. But Winston is good for your team and bad for your team, depending on what throw he makes.
Well, the local fans were booing Carr and cheering Hill whenever he was in the lineup. So,
yeah, I may give the reins to Hill and let him quarterback the whole game and see what happens.
Against the Panthers, boy, it looks awfully similar to the Tampa Bay game last week. Same line. Yeah. I'm not so sure they bet the Panthers down, though, this week.
We talked last week, just you and I, apparently others disagreed, that there would not be an interim coach bump with Carolina. And considering that Carolina covered luckily and covered late, I don't think there was an interim coach bump. And the fact that they lost, doesn't matter that they lost 21, 18, 16, 10, whatever. They lost. So there was no interim coach first week win. I think Carolina is a flawed team, although they did get a couple of defensive players back in the secondary. So in some respects, they're going to look better defensively, but very incomplete team.
So you're pounding the under, huh?
Carolina, New Orleans. Not with Winston. I mean, Winston is automatically, points for both teams.
Yeah, he's going to throw pick sixes and make some touchdowns.
Yeah. I remember he had that year with 30 TDs and 30 interceptions. I mean, he broke all kinds of records.
He's a 30-30 club.
That's historically impossible, yet it happened.
They should have came out with a baseball card with him and Jose Canseco.
Yeah.
But I think Jose did 40-40.
Yeah, that's true. That was as a rookie, I think, if I remember correctly. Because I was, as an aside, I was a Wally Joyner fan, and he was competing against Jose Canseco at that moment.
Atlanta leading the division at 6-6 at home against Tampa Bay. Any insight there?
Well, I wrote about these teams in the article, so I'd encourage people to read about what I think about Atlanta, what I think about Tampa Bay, and what I think about New Orleans. Atlanta somehow looks like they're going to back into this race. They're going to finish 8-9 or 9-8, but this is an incredibly important game. And if Atlanta wins it, it just makes their divisional record
Uh,
Probably a week too late to take them.
what do you think it should be?
Minus 250-ish.
You can lay minus 175, sir.
Okay.
But you can get 4-1 on the Bucks, and you can get 362 on the Saints. And I was just going to look up these schedules.
Yeah, I have it laid out in the article so you can see who plays who and what the tiebreakers are. But I think
Well, they're going
Atlanta
to be
has
if
best
Tampa
record.
Bay if Tampa Bay wins, they will be tied at 6-7,
Right.
and they will have the same divisional record of 3-1. And Tampa would have the better conference record at 5-4 instead of 4-5. So that and isn't points another tiebreaker? Tampa has more points. I don't understand what's so hard for Tampa. Why are they such huge dogs?
2.5.
No, I mean to win the division.
Oh,
here.
to win the division. Because they stink. I don't know. I think they have the tougher schedule of the group. Let me check remaining schedule.
No, at Green Bay, Jacksonville, at home, New Orleans at home, at Carolina. What?
Yeah, not too tough after all. Okay.
And then what does Atlanta have? They have if they lose, they have to go to Carolina. They play Indy. They have to go to Chicago and to New Orleans. If Tampa wins this game, I kind of lean toward Tampa being able to edge out Atlanta.
Yeah, obviously we know Atlanta's not a complete team. They beat New Orleans at home, and then they survived the Jets, whatever you think of that product, at the New York Jets, where it's not really home field advantage anymore with the Jets because the fans are just there to boo. So,
my gosh, I mean, and then look at New Orleans.
Yeah. You have New Orleans schedule in front of you?
Yeah, if they win this week and Tampa wins, you'd have a 3-way tie, but the Saints would be at a disadvantage for divisional record.
Correct.
And conference record. So the Saints do have the rougher road, but I don't know. And for some reason, the Saints have lower odds than than the Bucks. I don't understand.
Yeah, the Saints, the last two games at Tampa, home to Atlanta. We're not going to have the division decided until the end.
All three of these teams control their own destiny. That's for sure.
Yeah, and they have since week 1, but they're flawed teams.
I don't know. I'm itching to pull the Tampa Bay trigger.
I will say this: I don't think a second team is getting in from that division.
No, it is possible, but
yeah.
Because the schedules are so easy that one of those teams can go 4-1, which would make 9-8.
Yeah. So I would be shocked if any one of these three teams are in your top 18 in power ratings or in.
Oh, I think Atlanta is like 4th or 5th.
Yeah. Overall, yeah. In the division.
That is a humorous. Let me see.
I mean, it's just who you play, and these teams are in my bottom. They're rated between 20th and 27th. 20th and 25th, I should say.
I have one of them in the top 15, and I'm not telling you who it is. I'm not telling you who it is.
Oh, thanks. You could text it to me.
Okay. It is the AL Central of the NFL.
Yeah,
God.
pretty bad.
Colts and Bungles. I think the Bungles are actually pretty decent. I'm actually very interested to see where they sit in my rankings. I didn't.
Yeah. I gave them a bump up. I reduced the quarterback discrepancy between Burrow and Jake Browning. So I don't know what the odds are at the present time, but I will be a little surprised if they end up the dog. Yeah, and obviously that means a toss-up game, and there's some things Indy does better than Cincy, like sack opposing quarterbacks and so on. It'll be interesting. Obviously, a really critical game, especially for the Colts.
What do you think of Beathard? Is he going to fit the profile of second game failure once the game film's on him and people can prepare for him, or do you think he's actually going to resemble what we saw last night? Pretty darn adequate.
Browning, you mean?
Browning, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his body of work in college and his confidence and decision making last week have me believing that it's going to take a Baltimore type defense or a relatively strong defense to take him off kilter. I was impressed with him. I think he's going to be efficient against that Indianapolis defense. And down the road, the problem for Cincinnati is even if he's not that much of a drop off, their divisional record is probably going to keep them out of the playoffs. But maybe Cincinnati is now a thorn in other team. Cincinnati will play spoiler in December. And over the years, we've seen Cincinnati do that time and time again. So bring out those old situations because Cincinnati will be competitive.
Wow. You should have brought this up.
Uh-oh.
My buddy Rick sent me this. Jake Browning has a bunch of national high school records and is the winningest QB in Pac-12 history, never to be broken.
Yeah, Pac-12, never to be broken.
So the guy's a winner. He's not a wiener.
No, very competent performance last night.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the Bungles carry forward. They will carry forward. Texans and the Jets.
Okay. This is one of those that you're going to see probably a lot of teases with Houston. Do you think that's warranted? You don't think he will?
No, because they bet the Jets down so hard, the line's down to 5.5.
Oh, okay. Then it won't.
There's fives out there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not touching the game because I don't think the Jets have a home field advantage. And you're asking an awful lot for an expansion type team with great coaching and unbelievably outstanding quarterback play to be kind of like a Pittsburgh team. All of a sudden, they're favored by a lot of points instead of a dog.
It's going to be interesting. But what's the deal with they can't find anybody to play quarterback for the Jets?
Well, I don't know. Joe Namath is doing commercials right now, so he's busy.
What about Rivers? Why don't they get that guy? He just had his 10th kid. He's got bills to pay.
Yeah. I think what's going to happen is he's just going to field his own football team. He doesn't need anybody else.
That's true. Oh, this one's interesting. Seattle and the 49ers. I think that opened around 13, and everybody thinks they're smart because it's going to be a letdown spot for San Francisco. Seattle's had some extra rest. They're well coached. They got revenge from Thanksgiving Day, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on this game?
The thoughts are that Seattle is competitive. they're just like I said last week, they're young. They're going to make some kind of rookie I mean, they've had back-to-back drafts where about 9 of those guys are starting or playing significant roles in the roster. So you've got 22 starters, 9, maybe even 10 of them play significant roles. Half the roster is made up of rookies and second-year players. So you're going to have mistakes from time to time. This is still an incomplete team, but it's going to be a good team. And now they're playing against a team that really has their number in San Francisco. Not a letdown spot for San Francisco, in my opinion, because A, it's a divisional game, and B, they're in the running for the number 1 seed, and they don't want to stop now, and C, they're at home. Sometimes you get a little let down. You're on the road. You have extra travel. You don't get to focus and whatever. But all 3 of those things, if San Francisco for some reason has a bad game, I don't think it'll be because of a letdown. I just think it'll be because Seattle reached their potential in the game.
Well, and Seattle showed some backbone the last time out finally. So they haven't quit.
They haven't quit. What a tough schedule. What they're going to regret the most is the missed field goal against the Rams. That's the difference probably between making and missing the playoffs.
Well, both Seattle and the Rams look like they're going to lose and go to 6-7. And Green Bay looks like they're in a position to go 7-6. And Minnesota could go to 7-6, which would leave Minnesota and Green Bay the inside track for 2 wild card spots. Cowboys at 3rd. Is there a 4th one? Is there a 4th wild card spot?
Nope.
I mean,
that's it.
So Seattle and the Rams would be out of the playoffs potentially at that point.
Right. Now, Seattle, I think, holds a tiebreaker over one of those teams.
Probably, but they're
not on the Rams, but I think they beat Green Bay. I could double check.
Yeah, but Green Bay would have one more win than them. So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. If they end up tied, if Green Bay's fate is in Jordan Love's hands. If he continues to play more turnover-free ball, this is a pretty good team. Green Bay's power rating has risen.
That 49ers game is going to be an interesting one. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one, but let's go into that Vikings Raiders. I think that's pretty interesting. Do you think they're going to change quarterbacks, Mullen?
I think they give Dobbs another chance. I think he has 2 more weeks to learn the playbook because they were off. They get Justin Jefferson back. So that means he has an extra weapon. There should be more wide open receivers. And I don't know what happened, but he only ran the ball 2 or 3 times last week. And that's not his game. His game is built around the threat of a run to open up the pass. If you want him to be a pure passer, you've got the wrong quarterback.
Yeah, but
stick with it.
Was Mullen signed and on the roster then?
Yeah, I think he's been around, but I just think Dobbs gives them more versatility.
But maybe they weren't running him because they just could not afford to go to another quarterback that wasn't prepared.
Okay, and now, clearly a valid point. But sometimes quarterbacks like Dobbs, they understand that, but they can't help themselves from running. And he was running both at Arizona and early on in Minnesota 7 to 9 times per game. And then he shut it down last week.
Well, I think the Raiders' chances are looking pretty bleak at 5-7 at this point. And I think the Minnesota has the urgency. So you kind of give a little bit of a lean toward Minnesota here, don't you?
Both teams are off buys, so I just say both teams are focused for this game. So I'm not going to look at it at all as a non-divisional game, not even the same conference game. Both had 2 weeks to prepare. I'm not putting that as part of my equation.
I need the Broncos to win for my season wins over here. Am I going to get a win?
I haven't checked their seasonal situations here, but talk to Russell Wilson and see what he's up to. It looks like a toss-up game at first glance.
Well, I've got over 6.5 wins. Cost me a fortune, so I'd like to see them win 7.
I think it'll happen. They got
They're
New England at home coming up. They got they got 2 games against the Chargers. So if they split that and beat New England, you're in good shape.
the darlings, the Bills at the Chiefs.
Yeah, I will look at this game closely. I know there's going to be a lot of love for Buffalo, but I understand that love.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I think it's going to be a good game. I mean, I want to see more pan out on it. I'd like to see the line move a little bit, but you think if anything, Buffalo gets played, huh?
No, I mean, not necessarily, because Buffalo has some. We'll see what happens. What are we looking at? A strong 2.5 right now, week 3?
It's just 2.5.
Okay. Every time it goes to 3, I think you'll get Buffalo action on this game, primarily because they've been rested and their season is clearly on the line with this game. I understand the urgency with KC still as well. I think you got to do matchup analysis. I get the feeling you're leaning KC in this game, but there are situational factors that have me leaning the other way to Buffalo.
I'm not leaning Kansas City's way, but I'll tell you, if this fits the exact profile of when Buffalo played New England, where there's no way in hell that I'm taking plus 2.5 or 3. I will take teasers up to 12.5 or 8.5 and match it up with another team that I want starting at a different time, because I just feel like I'm on the sucker plan if I take 2.5 or 3 in a game like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has, I don't know, all the makings of 13 seconds left in the game. Somebody's going to win it because somebody botched the kick somewhere here and there. And so for me, I would probably have to pull the trigger at 3 pending my matchup analysis. If it doesn't go to 3, I'll talk to you on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, the key is really to, make sure what uniforms they're wearing and whether Taylor Swift will be attending. And then we can complete our handicap, I think.
Yeah, but she took a loss on Monday or Sunday.
Did she show up at the game?
Yeah, she was
at the game. Philly and the Cowboys.
Good game.
Does Dallas exact their revenge? Are they strong enough?
Yeah, all signs point to this is the right situation for Dallas. The one question you have to answer for me, does Metrics Mike McCarthy get in the way, yes or no?
This is the type of game where he's going to get Dan Campbellitis and probably make a bad decision at some point late in the game that's going to cost him. I mean, this is a game where you gotta, whatever your power rating is, you gotta dock it just for the closeness of the game, and McCarthy's likely to make an error in judgment.
I think expanding on that point, I think in certain 4th down situations, they're going to be conservative. And with that offense, I don't know if you want to do that, but I just have a feeling they're going to get tight at certain situations. Realistically, if you look at the body of the work for the whole season, even though Dallas has beat up on some cupcakes this year, Dallas has outplayed Philadelphia for the whole season. We've constantly thought about, well, Philly's winning ugly. Something's wrong. You're the one who said something's missing with Philly. And something still seems to be missing with Philly. So Dallas has outplayed them during the year. Now they have to prove it in this spot.
I like what you brought up, which I hadn't thought of, and I agree 100%, is I think part of the handicap is that I, too, fully anticipate that Dallas may be a little tight. And I think Philadelphia is not going to feel one iota of pressure or urgency, or they're going to just play their normal game. Whereas Dallas has that um, uh, cloud hanging over their head that they can't beat the good teams. They already lost once to Philly. It's just going to be a real ugly look if Philadelphia comes away with that win. So I think the pressure's on Dallas.
If Dallas wins this game, I'm going to set us up for next Tuesday. I think Philly is. I think Philly will get favorable odds to win the division. I'm going to give you the last 4 games for Philadelphia: at Seattle, home and road to the New York Giants, and home to Arizona. That looks like a 3-1 or 4-0. Now let's look at Dallas: at Buffalo, at Miami, back to back, home to the Lions, and then at Washington at the end. That looks like 2-2 to me. I think that Philly could lose this game and win the division.
I agree, and it's going to be interesting to see if Philadelphia and San Francisco have to play week 18 or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting. San Francisco, if they run the table, that'll be interesting. But I have to make note to self, hope that Dallas wins this game and then bet Philly to win the NFC East.
I'm going to try to remember that.
Yeah. This is what the brainstorming is about. I'm saying it out loud so that I have a shot at remembering it.
Now, I don't think there's any more brilliant organization in the NFL, because, for them to have the insight to not play any Saturday games this week when there's only one college football game, and to play 2 Monday games, and not only to have 2 Monday games, but to start them at the same time. I mean, these guys are brain surgeons. It's just brilliance, on display. How do they map this out so perfectly?
Yeah. Well, continuing on that thought, why not take ratings away from your own network by having 2 games simultaneously, along with the Manning cast on the ESPN2? So viewers will pick one of 3 choices, and they're going to downgrade the viewership for any and all of them, depending on what they pick. But the games are kind of weird too, because Miami, double-digit favorite against Tennessee, and the Giants, they're at home. I don't know who their starting quarterback is going to be. We'll see.
Well, Tyrod Taylor's going to be good to go, right?
They have to activate him.
I mean, one way or another, they don't have to play Danny DeVito, right?
You'd think so. Is this a potential
Well, there's
letdown
no
spot
Tyrod. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have to be careful who's the quarterback. My question to you is there, it's Monday night, so that should help, but it is a road game. Is there any potential letdown for Green Bay after just beating Kansas City?
Well, this I mentioned it when we were talking about Denver. I don't know what the turnover situation is with Green Bay over these 5 games, but they seem to have the same euphoria behind them. People actually have placed the Packers in the top 10. I saw there was a top 10 list this morning, I heard, where somebody had the Packers 9th. So there's a lot of Kool-Aid out there that's yellow and green.
Plus 5 turnovers over the last 3 weeks is what I have. So they certainly have helped themselves with the plus turnover margin, but they're also playing good ball. I mean, they beat some decent teams. They beat the Chargers, decent team, flawed but decent. They beat Detroit at Detroit, and they beat Kansas City. So we have to give them credit. But if they don't play their best football on Monday night, couldn't they be vulnerable?
The Jets signed Brett Ripien. Ooh,
Oh, that moves the needle.
God, that Tim Boyle, he just never gets a fair shake.
Let's bookmark Green Bay New York Giants because I want to study that a little bit more to see if there's any opportunity that maybe the Giants with 2 weeks could at least cover the spread.
Boy, they have 4 wins somehow. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I realize a couple of them are kind of fake wins.
You think?
Yeah. 69 sacks allowed, which is enormous, but they have 2 weeks to get healthier on the offensive line. And Green Bay is not a dynamic sacking team, averaging about 2.4 sacks per game, I believe, roughly 2.3, 2.4 sacks per game. So this isn't a great pass rush that the Giants will face. We've gone through the slate.
You think the Dolphins win? They beat Tennessee, or you think they have something to worry about there?
Yeah, I think they win.
Okay.
Tennessee is not a strong team against the pass. Tua to Tyreek should be a lot of fun to watch. Typing away.
Yeah, I have a Zoom call scheduled in 7 minutes, but
Well, let's wrap this up and say, please like us, subscribe to us, follow us for Friday's Inside Blitz. I'm sure Ted will have, I hope he has some good audio. He had some good ones last week. That was quite fun, the audio that he had last week. And interesting slate. I think there'll be some playable games this week.
yeah, I want. I expect you to have this entire schedule, completely mapped out, understood, and able to explain clearly to us.
Okay. Well, the good news is I'm moving to another planet where the days are longer, so that I have more time to do this. So.
See, I have minutes where I only get 40 seconds in a minute. So
yeah,
you get fewer days. Is that what happens for you?
I have fewer days. All of a sudden it becomes, oh my goodness, it's past 12 o'clock and I wanted to go to bed about 2 hours ago. So what's going on here? It's not good, but we're winding down in the NFL. We should cherish it rather than just, complain about it, because in about 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks or whatever, we won't have football to talk about. So
this has been a infuriating NFL year, and I'm not even down money. It's just I don't know.
Off-season autopsy. That's what we do. So it's been an enjoyable year for me, but it's at times there's just so much going on, but we deal with it. We have to compartmentalize. That's the name of the game.
You know what? I just hit a wall. I was just so annoyed with the way the Monday night games went. And it was not financial related. It was just, I'm just getting so annoyed at watching the randomness of the officiating, and it's just inexcusable. The luck factor in these games is.
Remember, there are flawed teams. There are flawed teams in the NFL, more than normal. There are tremendous number of quarterback changes, which means you got scheme changes and so on. You've got coordinators, coaches either being fired or in their first or second year. When you have that much turnover, you have more volatility. And in my opinion, you have more erratic performance team to team from 1 week to the next. You don't have a Kansas City or a San Francisco or some of these teams that have been stable over a large number of years. And we just have to deal with it. The situation with Tampa, Atlanta, New Orleans is fluid because those teams have so many flaws. It's incredible.
Oh, I should comment. I haven't been in comments in a while. I apologize if anybody has sent any comments. I've been. It's certainly not because I've got idle hands and I'm goofing off. I don't know what it is. So if anybody has sent anything, I apologize for not responding. And
All right.
we did reverse the primetime unders, though. Didn't we have 3 straight overs in primetime?
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Again, I don't want to comment on the refs too much. Referee assignments are random, and some of the referees that have officiated some of the primetime games are more known for penalty flags than others. You can do referee analysis. Sometimes it's a waste of time, and sometimes it's nauseating to do that. But
Hey, Gizmo.
All right, we have
Gizmo
a dog in
says-
the fight.
Gizmo says the time's over.
Time's over. See you guys on Friday. Thanks for the brainstorming. Good luck, everybody.
Cheers.